Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me through benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcasts. People of Distinction is internationally syndicated solely due to the love and support that you all continue to give. We're available across all major distributors, and as long as you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. Now sit back and strap in, because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Lindsey K. Ham Sr. Now we're going to be discussing his incredible book, The Reality of Everything. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's a lot of other places, man. Type it into a search bar, sit back, and be greeted with all of them. And before I go any further, I want to quickly point out the fact that Lindsey was brought to us by Citi of Books. So for writers out there listening in who have gone through their process and now you need some assistance moving the book you just worked so hard to create, head on over to citiofbooks.com and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is more than equipped to help you do just that. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Lindsey here on the line. People, we've all had that moment, right? We've all spent time gazing up at the stars, right? Studying a leaf's intricate design and sitting back and thinking with a deep intuitive sense that none of this is accidental, right? Like, I know that's universal. I have done that so many times in my life, and I know you all have as well. But what if that feeling isn't just a sentiment? What if it's the most rational conclusion from the data itself? All right, so you can see where I'm going with this. Enter Lindsey, man, because listen, he has synthesized evidence from across scientific disciplines to make a staggering claim that the universe is a masterpiece of intentional function, and that the idea of this spontaneous existence, it's actually a linguistic and a logical trap. All right. His book, The Reality of Everything, man, it's for anyone who has ever asked why and suspected science was afraid of the answer. Well, we're going to get into it today. We're going to ask some of the tough questions. We're going to hear his argument because I am very excited to dive into this. And at the end of the day, listen, he's going to pose some options. You can pick it up or you can leave it. But the bottom line is the conversation is going to ensue. And that, I think, is the most important part. First and foremost, Lindsey, welcome to the network. And thank you for being a guest, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I thank you for having me on your show.
Lindsey, listen, it's a pleasure, man. I think this is a very compelling argument that you're making. I'm here with it. I'm waiting to hear the specifics. Because like I said, I think this is definitely going to be a great conversation starter. First and foremost, before we jump into the book, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I'm 61 years young. I was born in California, raised really all over the place because my dad was in the Air Force. So as a young child, I was, in New York, Germany, and California, wherever else. And, as a young person, that really started my journey into understanding people a lot better. And even as a child, I was curious about why. I was a born scientist, you might say. Mm-hmm. When you see something or something happens, always why. In my mind, it was why. How does that happen? How does that work? Why did that happen? That kind of thing. And that stayed with me. That's been with me. It's still that way with me, as a matter of fact. Yeah, I've done a lot of different things. I'm blessed. God has blessed me with many, many talents. I spent 27 years in the United States Army. Everywhere I ever went, people would always end up calling me a Renaissance man. I didn't come up with that. It was just something that would happen. Somebody would come up and call me a Renaissance man because God has blessed me with talent and to be able to do a lot of different things very well.
Yeah.
And I don't say anything out of conceit or arrogance, nothing like that. I'm confident for sure because God gave it to me, and I'm not ashamed of what He's given me. And He gave it to me for His purposes to use as He created me to use them. And one of those is science and just being alive and being aware and having experienced all the different things that I've experienced in this life. Having been a police officer, I've Like I said, I was in the Army. I was enlisted and commissioned. So I was an officer and an enlisted soldier. All kinds of things. I've been injured and divorced twice and college football and all this kind of stuff. So I've learned a lot. God has put a lot in me, and I recognized years and years and years ago that the things he's put in me and allowed me to experience and see are not for me. It's for everybody else, for other people.
Yeah.
I don't think you go through anything just because, there's purposes for that. Because when you go through things, you can later on talk to somebody else who's going through those same kind of things and know what you're talking about and actually help them.
I love that. Listen, man, first and foremost, thank you very much for your service. And listen, The Anchor is all about this book, The Reality of Everything. Tell us more about it.
The reality of everything. This generation of people, as the Bible speaks of generations, and this generation, we've been duped. We've been duped. We've been lied to. And one thing about this, I'm going to say this real quick, is that if you do not know that you're being lied to, you're not ever going to know that until you hear the truth. You're not going to know that. I can sit here right now and tell you that I was whatever. You're not going to know if I'm telling you the truth or not until you find out the truth about that. And that's just true with life. So the devil is real. And he is a liar. And through science, this modern generation has been lied to, and people believe it. And people wonder why folks are going into kindergarten schools and shooting up children and all this crime and all this crazy stuff is going on. Well, if you believe that you're just a spontaneous nothing, stardust, you're just leftover stardust, if you believe that, then why wouldn't you do anything you want to do? Why wouldn't anything be off the table? You can do whatever. It doesn't matter because there are no consequences. That's what people would think, right? And that's why the world is going like it is, because God is real. God is the ultimate existence. And there are definitely consequences for what you do, and each and every one of us are going to have to answer for ourselves. And so through science, the devil has managed to get the world to believe that they're just nothing. And at the same time, people say that they don't believe in God or they don't believe that God created the universe. The science 1,000% proves every single word in the Bible. Science is not the problem. The problem is the interpretation of that science. If I'm a scientist and I don't believe in God and I do these experiments or I look out into the universe or I examine a microscopic whatever, I'm not going to attribute that to God at all, even though that science is showing that there. And the fact is that everything is purposed. Everything is functioning with purpose. Every single bit of everything that there is functioning with purpose. If you say something is spontaneous, what does that mean? That means that there is no purpose. It just happened. It just happens to be here. It just got here. It just came here. There's no reason. There's no purpose. It's just here. Well, that's not what we see in science, and we know better than that. And scientifically, there's no such thing as spontaneity. We know that scientifically. Spontaneity is impossible. Scientists will tell you that, but then they turn around and say the universe is spontaneous. I'm going to say this real quick, too. That, everybody, most humans, I think everybody does, at some point or other in their lives, ask the question, why am I here? What is this all about? Why am I here? Why do I exist? And anytime you ask the question why about anything, you can only ask that question if you already know that there's a purpose and a reason. And you're asking that question to find out the purpose and the reason. Well, if there's a purpose and a reason for something, that means that there's a creator of that. That's functioning because somebody put it there to function. And we do it all the time as human beings. That is a truth. And the only way that can be is that God created, because God is purpose.
Remember, it's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble. You got to purchase your copies of The Reality of Everything today. Add this to your shelf because we're just going to scratch the surface, man. There's going to be so much left off of the discussion. And listen, with so much information to cover, you couldn't possibly get to it in a quick 20-minute interview. So my follow-up question now that I want to go into, because listen, Lindsey, I can tell how passionate you are. This is something that you have spent years going through studying and deciphering. So let's go in a little bit more to what you found, right? Because listen, your book, you argue that the idea of spontaneity, of spontaneous existence, is a grand illusion. Okay, so what is the most convincing piece of scientific data, really from any field, that when viewed through the lens of purpose, flips the mainstream narrative on its head?
If I'm of the idea that everything is spontaneous, and I'm a scientist or I'm whoever I am, and I say, no, I don't believe in God, I don't believe there's purpose, it's just spontaneous. Okay, if the universe started from a spontaneous Big Bang, just all of a sudden there was nothing, and then just for no reason at all, stuff just happened. And then the Earth and the planets and the stars, they just happened to just by themselves get into the perfect rotations and perfect orbits and the perfect atmospheres and the perfect everything like we find them right now. Mm-hmm. That just happened all by itself. If I'm of that mindset that that everything is spontaneous, if everything is spontaneous, then why are spontaneous things not still happening? And what does that mean? That means that all of a sudden there'll be a basketball sitting over there, or there'll be something I don't even know what it is. It just all of a sudden appears in my yard. I have no clue what that is. Or you're driving down the road and there's a purple dinosaur standing in the middle of the road all of a sudden. Just all out of the blue, spontaneous things. Of course, because everything is spontaneous. So why would that not happen? That everybody knows. I don't care if you can be the biggest idiot in the world. You know good and well that while you're sitting somewhere in a restaurant eating something, that all of a sudden 14 purple basketballs and dinosaurs and cakes and bicycle wheels and other stuff that you've never seen before are not just going to all of a sudden show up. Never happened. It will never happen because nothing is spontaneous. Right. That's what spontaneity is. So if we live in a spontaneous universe, then this glass of orange juice that I'm looking at right there, it's orange juice right now. But when I pick it up to sip it, who knows what it's going to be? It could be anything because it's spontaneous. Chemicals, every single element that there is in existence maintains its properties. So much so that I can tell you, if you put 8% of this in 15% of that, you're going to get this as a result. And everybody around the world can do that same thing. And guess what? They're going to get that same result. Why? Because it's not spontaneous, it's purposed. The properties of that chemical, the properties of the other chemical, when they're combined, are going to make this right here. Why? Because they're not spontaneous. There's purpose. They're purposefully stable. God created them that way because there's purpose behind them.
Okay, so listen, Lindsey, as we close out, man, after your reader closes that final page, what is the message that you hope that they receive and that they take with them? How should they now be perceiving the world around them?
That is an awesome question. Awesome. I love it. I love that question. I love it. Because actually after each chapter, after each page, when I was writing this book, each page, when you read each page of that book, I want you to stop. And you're probably going to. Most people are, because it makes you think. You know, I want you to do that. I want you to critically think. I want you to not believe it, or just try to not believe it, or try to disprove it. So when they close that book, I want them to be changed if it was something they didn't already know. Mm-hmm. They already knew it. That's verification. But there's all kinds of things in that book that anyone reading it, of course, they're going to, whether they agree with it or disagree with it, they're going to say, wow, that's very, very difficult to argue with because it is true. And like I said, when you've been lied to, somebody tells you a lie, you're not going to know you're being lied to until you hear the truth. So when they close that book, they don't have to believe it. You don't have to believe it. It's true because it is true. And it's not me. I ask God to help me word it in a way that anybody that can read that book and understand that, wow, I never thought about that before. Wow, I never heard anybody say that. Wow, that is true, because it is true. I used to think whatever, but that's true, because you can't change the truth. It's like I told you earlier about your name. I can't change your name. That is your name. Mm-hmm. You know, I can not believe it all I want to. I can say whatever I want to say and try to change this and try to change that, try to pretend whatever I want to pretend. But I that's your name. And after I'm shown your birth certificate, and I talk to your mother, and she tell, yeah, I named him that, yeah, and all your friends and all your classmates and all your coworkers and everything else and everybody, okay, I can still not believe it, but that's just on me 1,000%. That's just my foolishness, you know. But once I find out the truth about that being your name, once people find out the truth about God being real and being the creator of everything, hopefully, hopefully it won't be so stiff-necked and hard-headed that they just still don't believe. And if you do, then, yeah, you know, you just can't do anything about that.
People, listen, as I mentioned, the conversation has just started. Trust and believe we have barely scratched the surface. So I'm going to say it one more time. It's available wherever books are sold. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble. Type it into a search bar, be greeted with all of it. The Reality of Everything by Lindsey K. Ham Sr. This is one you need to add to your shelf. A challenging discussion that I think is going to help shift perceptions, or at least open the door to the possibility, okay? Because, you know, like he said, this is all about purpose, right? We live in a universe that is purpose at its core. And if you take nothing else from this interview, man, let it be this, that your search for meaning, it isn't a psychological glitch, it's you. A purposeful being resonating with the fundamental frequency of reality itself. It starts with this book. Head on over there, purchase your copies, and let the conversation begin. Lindsey, this has been a true pleasure, man, an absolute delight. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. God bless you.